Hey, welcome back everyone. My name is Veronica. If you're new here, I'm a licensed counselor and I took the NCE and passed it. I lived through all the anxiety, mind game, stress, blood, sweat, and tears that went into this test. And this is the next part of my NCE series and playlist where I go over information on how to set yourself up for success, overcome this big test, and feel good doing it. If you haven't watched the few videos that I posted before, I would definitely recommend starting there because it explains a lot of the pitfalls and it's good to have that information up front. So this video is about what the test is actually like, the formatting, the scoring, and the kind of weirdness of it. So yeah, this video is not your traditional test prep, but instead a way to kind of prep your mind to take the test. And kind of all the things that I wish I knew beforehand going in. So if that hits home for you and you're about to take the test, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Save this video for later in the future to come back to. And I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so any help would be greatly appreciated. And so let's get started. So first things first, you need to understand that this is not a normal test. It does not feel like your undergraduate exams. It's not even like most graduate school exams. Now, this doesn't apply for all the questions, but there are a few in there where the questions are really written in an unnatural way, not in a way that most people would talk. It's not how your professors would ask the questions, and sometimes they use words that are like oddly out of place and unrelated to counseling that would make you pause and focus more on trying to understand the language itself than like really honing into other context clues of the question. And a lot of times the answer choices, they sound identical. So it's like you're not being asked what is the correct answer, but you're being asked like what answer is the best fit and which one's more right. So typically I found myself being able to get rid of two of the options right off the bat. And then I was kind of stuck sitting there debating between like the other two, because in some situations you could justify both of them being correct. But they want to know which one is more correct and which one is more right. And that's the entire exam, and they did that intentionally. But yeah, so it's just being mindful of that and the word traps that they use. So if you're reading a question, and let's say you're tired because you've been doing this test for like an hour, pay attention to when the prompt says things like not, or always, or except. Those are the all or nothing words that are meant to trip you up. So if you're skimming through the question, it's very easy to miss them if you're rushing through and if you're tired. That doesn't mean that you're dumb. It's just the test is designed that way and it's long. So this is also why the process of elimination will become your best friend in this test, because like you can cross off at least one of them automatically most of the time, and that just automatically improves your chances of getting it right. So probability sucks if you guess at 4 random options, but it drastically improves if you're guessing from like 2 options. So right there, you've already improved your odds of getting the right answer. Another thing that I wanted to mention is English is my first language, and there were still moments when I was reading the questions multiple times to myself just because of the way that it was worded. It was very weird. And I kept thinking to myself, like, no one would ever ask me the question like this in this way, but yet here we are. The only thing I could really compare it to is if you ask ChatGPT or AI to develop 10 different ways of asking one question, and they choose like the really random dumb one. So I like to point this out because once again, not all the questions on the test are actually like applying to your grade itself. So what do I mean by that? Let's go over basic format. You get 3 hours and 45 minutes, in total 225 minutes to answer 200 multiple choice questions and a bunch of different areas. So we got professional ethics, assessment and diagnosis, growth and development, counseling skills, social and cultural diversity, career development, group work, research. So out of those 200 questions, only 160 actually are gradable and scored. 40 of them do not count at all. And you have no idea which one is which. So if you come across one of those really weirded questions, that doesn't necessarily mean it counts to your score. It's just something that they're maybe testing to see if they want to keep in other future versions of the exam. So if you're fixated and focused on that one singular question and you're like, wow, that one question really stumped me, and you're spending all your time on it, just know that that particular question might not even be something that you should spend your time on. So keep that in mind, that 40 of these are blanks, and they're basically experimental. So if you focus and fixate and your mind starts spiraling and you're like, I've never seen this question before, I don't know this term, I didn't study this, I don't remember. If you let that mentally shake you, especially early in the test, and it plants that seed of doubt, it will mess with you. And the last thing you need is a blank mind or to freeze up during this test. So that's something I wish someone had told me beforehand, because your anxiety can really set the tone for when you're taking this test. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is the format of this test. If you are taking it through the Pearson online proctored exam, it is broken into a few parts. They do not give you all 200 questions up front. You get basically part 1, which is 100 questions. You go through and click submit, takes you to a break room where you can go to the bathroom or drink some water. I can't remember if you have to stay in the room or not. And then you are introduced to the second part once you come back from, I think, a 15-minute break. You can either start up sooner, or you can do your whole duration of your break and then resume the exam. And then you get your last part, which is 100 more questions. And then you officially submit. So I'm saying it again for the people in the back. They do not give you all 200 questions when you sit down. I genuinely thought that I had 200 questions in one block, and I did not realize that the test was broken into 2 parts. So here is a friendly PSA that I wish someone had told me. So when you're taking the test, you can map out how much time you want to spend in part 1 and then in part 2. Now, I'm sure they said this in the beginning instructions when I was clicking through, but I just had such anxiety, and all of the practice tests that I had didn't have that intermission mid-break. So I think I was just functioning on okay, I have to get through. I'll get through all the questions. So the anxiety plays a role in how you show up for a test. Another thing I did want to mention is you cannot track your performance mid-test. You might get 5 questions in a row that feel really easy, and then you might get to that question that is worded weird, and you're not going to know the answer off the top of your head maybe, and it doesn't mean that you're doing bad. It's just the test itself is randomized. You might also come across 5 questions in a row where you are not confident, and if you let that shake you, that can impact your odds for passing and doing well on the test. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that the cutoff scores are typically different because there are so many different versions of the test, and they're grabbing from all these different questions from a pool. So everyone might get a different score because they're taking different versions of the exam. An easier version of the exam will have a higher cutoff score than a harder version of the exam. So one person may have said, I just need an 84 to pass. And then another person may have said, I needed a score of 92. Both people are kind of right and kind of wrong. It just depends on the specific version of the test that you got. So I would say a rule of thumb is if you got in the 70s range, you probably didn't pass. And if you got above 105, you're probably in the good range. But like I said, it depends on your exam. So comparing your numbers online to random people that took the test already, it's not going to give you accurate information. I took my test in the state of Maryland, and I didn't get an actual notification of whether or not I passed or failed for over a month. And so it's hard to sit with that, but comparing your numbers online to strangers in different states, you're not going to really know unless you're in one of the states that tells you instantly once you're done your test if you passed or not. Next topic. A lot of people love to say that the first half of this test is easier than the second half, but in my experience, I call bullshit. The difficulty fluctuates the entire time, and what actually changes is your mental stamina. So by the time you're in the test and you've spent already over an hour and a half reading questions, you're mentally tired, and sometimes you're overthinking, or maybe you're annoyed and just trying to get things done or second guessing yourself. So it might feel harder, but that doesn't mean it is harder. It's just a mental marathon. All right, next question. What's the platform like? So the testing platform itself is pretty straightforward. You can flag a question to come back to. You can review all of the unanswered questions, and you also get an off-screen scratched piece of paper that you can use. There is a clock that's in the upper corner counting down, which is stressful, so you can make it disappear, so you're not staring at it the whole time. You do get a warning when, I think, at the 10-minute mark, but they don't tell you when you're halfway through your time. So your pacing's gonna matter. So what I would recommend is you take 225 minutes and divide it by 2. So you typically get about 112 minutes for the first set of questions and then 112 minutes for the second set of questions. So then you're going to be able to keep up with the pacing, and you're not going to get stuck in one half versus the other, or spending too much time and not getting through all your questions. So keep that minute mark so that you know that at that time you have to move on to the second group of questions, or do it soon so that you don't get stuck and not being able to finish. An important note to make about the scratch piece of paper, if you're going to use it during your test, they prohibit you from doing something called a brain dump. So if you're about to hop in the test and you're like, oh, I don't want to forget this information, and you try to throw it all on the piece of paper, you're not allowed to do that. Your proctor might stop you. However, you can use that piece of paper to help you use process of elimination. So if you automatically rule out 2 of the questions, you can write that down, ruled out A and B, and then you can debate in your mind between the other 2 options that you think it is. So that gives you a space to process your thoughts instead of keeping them in your mind. You can just kind of put them all down, pen to paper. I don't know if that refreshes when you go to the second part of the exam, so I just want to throw that out there. It's still important to know that it's there as an option. Once you are finished with your test and you click submit, sometimes your platform might freeze. Don't freak out. Let it stay up there. Don't touch anything, and usually it fixes itself. Your score is calculated right away. It might take a few minutes to show up in your account. You usually get an email, and if you don't, you can log back in and you can check under the exam history. And so it's anticlimactic, but and if yours freezes up on the loading screen like mine, you'll low-key freak out and you'll feel like, oh my God, did it not go through? So yeah, as far as passing goes, depending on your states, some of them will show you instantly, and some of them will have you wait and take a month or 2 to let you know if you passed. So no one really warned me of the timeline. So it's cool to just throw that out there so you have reasonable expectation. So the big takeaways. While the NCE is a little awkward and mentally exhausting, there are some things that you can do, like using the scratch piece of paper, using process of elimination, mentally preparing yourself, hey, not all these questions are going to make sense, and some of them don't count, and some of them are going to be really hard, and that's okay. So the mental prep is key. So personally, I think that one of the biggest mistakes that people make is that interpreting their discomfort mid-test as you're going to fail. And that is not the same thing. You can pass this test, and sometimes it's just helpful to know what to expect and mentally prepare yourself for what it feels like. So that's why I'm making these videos. All right, so that's pretty much all for this video. I hope that you were able to find it helpful. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share and save. Add it to your watch later list so that you can watch it when you're closer to your test. I hope it gives you a general idea of what to expect so that you can prepare yourself and also be able to use some of those tools that they have in the interface that I mentioned in this video. Best of luck with your studies, and I'll be making some more videos to help you prep. Also, if you have any questions or videos that you want to see in the future, drop that comment below, and I'd be happy to support you in any way I can. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Bye.